there. This video is looking at the importance of ecosystem management, and we're going to look at all the different reasons why we must maintain our ecosystem. So today we are just going to look at the maintenance of genetic diversity. When we look at the syllabus, these are the dot points that we'll be covering over these next few videos. As you can see, and what I've just said, we're just going to focus on that first dot point on genetic diversity. The next few weeks, you're going to see a video up for each of the other dot points. You need to know all of the reasons why we manage our ecosystems and why we protect them, and that's what we're going to look at today. So first of all, ecosystem management and protection. First of all, diversity on life is inadmissible, which means it cannot be measured. Every plant, every animal has to be here, and it's here for a reason, and each species, no matter how big, how small, is valued so much we cannot put a money value on it. Protection of ecosystems is obviously vital for their existence, and ecosystem management can range from something very, very small to, as you can see, this little picture from Bateau Bay Beach, which talks about making sure you don't drop litter, protect the vegetation, to something huge like trying to prevent species becoming extinct. And you'll see some examples of this on the news, trying to save like white rhinos, that type of thing. So there are so many different reasons, so many different management methods of ecosystem management, but it's the reasoning behind them that is really important. What we've got to realise, though, that these management strategies alone can't just save the environment or protect our environment. It's especially important we look at our relationship with nature, because it certainly has changed, particularly the last few years. Since the Industrial Revolution, we've become out of sync with nature. We live more in cities and rely more on technology. We don't need to worry about where our next meal's coming from. So that's what we mean by that last point. Okay, so when we look at genetic diversity, we're looking at the gene pool of a particular species of animal. And what I've got here is a Tasmanian devil, which I'm going to explain to and use an example in a minute. But let's have a look. First of all, ecosystems that have greater diversity, so that means more different types of species, and within that species, different types of species. Basically, the more resilient ecosystems are to change. Where diversity diminishes, that means ends, the function of the ecosystem is put at severe risk, and we're seeing that in places like the Great Barrier Reef, because the species of fish and coral aren't very resilient to change, and because the rate of change is speeding up so much, particularly climate change is affecting sea temperatures, it just can't cope. So we're seeing the function of ecosystems put at huge amounts of risk. The vast number of species that have inhabited the planet have created a massive database of survival strategies over billions of years. So I think what you've got to remember is that, you know, been on Earth for about 2 billion years, and when it first did, the Earth was very hostile. It didn't have an atmosphere, there was limited amounts of water, and those strategies have evolved over those billions of years, which animals still use today. And it's that range of strategies that have helped animals to adapt and improve their gene pool. Each species, a lot have said before, has its own gene pool from which an almost infinite number of individual characteristics can be selected. So if you look at domestic dogs, for example. Dog canine species have always been around the world regardless of humans. It's one of the very few species of animal that has done that. But if we look at domestic dogs, we can see that dogs have so many different characteristics that we've led to those different types of breed, and we breed these dogs for different reasons for humans. So that's what we mean by that. So a strong gene pool, an animal that has a very strong gene pool, is the dogs and canines, wolves, coyotes, that type of animal. Going the opposite direction, an animal that has a very weak gene pool is our friend here, or below, our Tasmanian devil. Now, the Tasmanian devil has a very weak gene pool. Now, we believe so because of the extreme weather conditions that the devil has been experiencing, and the isolation. So this basically means that because of its isolation, the Tasmanian devil doesn't have many different breeds of devil. There's just a few particular types, and as a result, it doesn't have access to those survival strategies that I talked about. Now, I picked the devil is because they're in the news at the moment because they're close to extinction, and believe it or not, it's got nothing to do with humans, but it's the poor gene pool. Because they're having facial cancers, and those facial cancers are the only cancer that they know in the world that actually spread. Most cancers they don't. It's to do with genes, but it doesn't spread from like a virus does. Um, and it's the first type of cancer that they've seen, and it's having a huge impact on these devils. So Tasmanian devil is a good example of a species animal that doesn't have a strong gene pool. Basically, the most successful species is at regeneration and adaptation. The less vulnerable it is to changes in its own ecosystem. I've just talked about that, the devil, and it, obviously hasn't adapted, hasn't regenerated to its surroundings, and that's why it's at risk of becoming extinct. Those communities. So a community is an ecosystem that's made up of different populations of different species. They're the ones who can survive stress for long periods of time, and this is the survival of the. When that loss of genetic diversity is brought about, particularly by humans, the stress has to be looked and considered as an opportunity cost, because what's happening with our human population expanding, we need to know what species of animal are productive, and the same for plants as well. And that's what we mean by opportunity cost, and that's what we're going to be looking at in the next slide. So our lack of knowledge and ecological processes have really become evident in the last few decades, because we're realizing that species of animal and plant are very, very important, and we can learn from those. So that's why it becomes an opportunity, because if we lose animals, we do not lose animals or plants, we do not realize how useful they can actually become. Why it becomes an opportunity cost. So it's really important that genes are diverse, and we keep looking and becoming more educated about any new species of plants and animals that we discover, because it's going to be important maintaining human life on Earth for a very long time. Okay, I hope that explains to you why it's important to maintain ecosystems for the genetic diversity. I hope you got a lot out of the video. If you can make sure you make your Cornell notes and you are highlighting all these keywords and terminology that I've used, that would be great for you, particularly so you're ready for your HSC exam. Make sure you like and subscribe my channel. Thanks a lot. Catch you soon. Thanks. Bye.